When it comes to brand loyalty in tech, I can honestly say I go wherever I want, whenever I feel like it. Is Mac OS better to use than Chrome OS, Windows, or Linux? Well, I run them all, and I can make the argument as to why one would be a better purchase than another based on whoever's asking. Like, what about Android and iOS? I didn't get my first iPhone until 2016 after nearly half a decade exclusively on Android. You can't say I'm biased toward one or the other. I find many devices rotating in my pocket throughout the year that can actually claim a spot in my daily usage. The one piece of tech that has no competition, in my opinion, is a smartwatch. Since 2019, the Apple Watch has almost exclusively dominated my wrist as my favorite smartwatch. How did I go from not using an iPhone to relying on an iPhone just to use an Apple Watch in only a couple of years? It's not as complex as it may seem. My first smartwatch was a beloved black Pebble I began using somewhere in 2013. That was my gateway into wearables, and I quickly grew attached and addicted to the form factor. Shortly after, I wore the Tizen-powered Samsung Gear 2 with its clunky body everywhere I went, thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. I got into the smartwatch game at a time where a majority of people would give me this weird look as if I was a Star Trek nerd for wearing a phone on my wrist, which, I am a Star Trek nerd. Moving from one Android Wear watch to another over time, it wasn't until 2017 that I began to notice a massive societal change. More and more people seem to have a watch with a screen on their wrist. The watch that seemingly broke through to the mainstream, it was none other than the Apple Watch. Nowadays, I find myself on iOS as much, if not more, than I'm on Android. There's still dozens of things I prefer on Android, but the days where I would dread switching over to a new iPhone have seemingly vanished. I've actually longed to switch back to an iPhone while reviewing an Android phone more often than I ever thought I would. Recently, I realized why I felt this way. I didn't miss being on an Apple iPhone. I missed wearing an Apple Watch. Of all the smartwatches I've worn in nearly a decade, none have felt more comfortable on my wrist than Apple's offering. While many smartwatches can do basically the same things as an Apple Watch, none of them provided a user experience as refined as the Silicon Valley giant. I just don't have the same feeling for the Samsung Galaxy Watch as I do with the squared Apple competitor. That's not saying that the Galaxy Watches are bad watches. I enjoy using them when I'm on an Android phone. I've had many generations of Samsung watches, but if given an option, I would hands down choose an Apple Watch every single day of the week. It isn't even a conundrum for me. And while it's easy to chop a default win to Apple due to the lackluster competition from Google's Wear OS, I'd actually be inclined to give Apple a lot more credit. Who would have thought that in 2022, the best valued smartwatch and potentially best valued smartphone are made by Apple? That same Apple that for years, we perceived had a perceived reputation for having customers overpay because of a name tax. An Apple Watch I see is a mere $250. That's actually tremendous value for a watch I personally wear as my preferred model. I've owned smartwatches that cost more than the $250 price point, and even if I did enjoy my time with it while I was reviewing it or when I owned it, none of them really immersed themselves into my life, as an essential piece of my life. There was always something about them that left me searching for more. I feel that way sometimes about a new iPhone, but never about the Apple Watch. I think what Apple has done with the Watch series is create a tech gadget that holds certain crossover product prestige. Throughout the whole branding, the watch bands, and even the launch faces, Apple has just created an ecosystem within an ecosystem. Of all the smartwatches on the market, the Apple Watch is the closest competitor to a traditional mechanical luxury watch we have in this space. Add in the benefits of your smartphone, such as the ability to answer calls, text messages, and use some apps, and it's an appealing product for many people who already have an iPhone. The same people that a decade ago would see my Gear 2 as a millennial annoyance and ask me to shut off my phone while in an outdoor auditorium are now sporting the same kind of technology on their wrist. You can hear I'm salty because that happened before. Apple changed the way they saw gadgets and made it an essential part of those people's lives, just as a Casio Rolex did in those people's previous generations. The fact that an Apple Watch can now be seen as a luxury item or an everyday working person's watch illustrates just how wide of a range the device has reached. It literally can be someone's Casio or someone's Rolex depending on that person. Last year, I bought my baby boomer father an Apple Watch Series 6 for his birthday, and I wanted to encourage an easier way for him to gauge his health as he reaches senior citizen thresholds. With all these sensors available at his disposal, his initial reluctance kind of quickly became amusement and awe. This is a man who exclusively wore and collected mechanical watches for like 50 plus years. This is someone who heavily dislikes altering routines and items in his life. He now wears his Apple Watch at least 3 to 4 days a week. That's a big deal. That is a huge deal. He isn't the only one, too. Strategy Analytics reported in a market research study that in 2019, Apple outsold the entire Swiss watch industry with their Apple Watch lineup. Apple says there are over 100 million current Apple Watch users as of 2021. Smartwatches have come a long way since many of us tech enthusiasts first began drooling over the Pebble Watch. The Apple Watch was everything I wanted in a smartwatch that I began chasing after in 2013. While there inevitably will be a stagnation of enthusiasm for Apple Watches over time, it's going to happen, I'll always appreciate this little guy and everything it has provided for us in the smartphone world.
So the other day, I was on a Zoom call at work, and I just dropped everything I was saying, and I told them, subscribe.